there's this great quote: "When people pay, they pay attention."
Nice.
Start if you want to prioritize something, find a way to pay for it, because it's a signal to your brain, your subconscious, that, oh, this is more important. I need to really pay attention to this. You'll find a way to make it work. Nate, I'm always on the lookout for episode ideas, and every once in a while, well, actually more than just once in a while, you say something, and my head goes, huh? Oh, interesting. Let's talk about that. And you said something in a meeting we were having recently where, I just want to quote this correctly, a client said, "Nate, I need to understand how you use Slack and why." Now, for those of you all that are listening that don't know what Slack is, it's just a project and task management system for a team. We've actually referenced it on the podcast in past episodes, but if you're a new listener, you're watching on YouTube for the first time, maybe you're not sure what that is. So Nate and I talked a little bit about this, and we thought, we had Kirsten on at the end of last year, and she was talking about how we manage projects as a team and in the various businesses. Yeah, but we didn't get into the nitty-gritty of the tools that we're using. And so for those who are interested in this topic, I would say go back and listen to those Kirsten episodes. Maybe go back all the way to episodes, I think it's 46 and 48, where we talk about how to manage or kind of productivity at the business level, not the personal level. Yeah. Those are some good episodes. In fact, those episodes, we were actually recorded those in person at your home in Brooklyn. Kind of standout episodes there. But anyway, I thought today we would have perhaps a bit of a shorter episode to talk about team communication tools, best tools and systems to use for promoting productivity amongst your team, even if it's a small team, even if it's yourself. And we'll get into the episode, we'll get out. So welcome back to Seven Figure Music School, everyone. This is the podcast where Nate and I talk about how to run a mission-driven business, school, studio that's fun to own and run. Nate, just ask a question.
Yeah.
Just go right to what he said. Why do you use Slack? You start and then I'll finish.
Okay, great. So like you said, Slack is just our communication tool. It's like a Discord, that kind of vibe, right? And the reason why we implemented it, and I was just looking back in our history as to when we got it at BMF, I'm going to guess it was back in 2016, 17. I can't remember how old Slack is, but it was around then. The reason why is because as our team started to grow, so when beyond 8, 9, 10 people, we were struggling with responding to everybody's questions, comments, concerns, whether it was, and I'm talking about Slack as an internal communication tool, right? So what we decided was that what had gotten us to where we were wasn't working anymore, right? So for example, communicating in the hallway. Hey, how do you do this? Can you show me that? That kind of works okay. Communicating via email never worked great for me because I kind of sucked at efficiently responding to all my emails. And then basically what happened was you just had all these communications that were getting dropped. So Slack became a solution where we said, all internal communications between teachers, staff, etc., is going to happen within Slack. That's it. That's the one place we're going to communicate. Now, of course, we were still passing in the hallway and sharing ideas and things like that, but we developed a system where we said, if some teacher says, hey, Nate, I got a question about this game. Can you tell me this or share this resource? I say, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Slack me and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. So now it became a system where everybody understood that if you wanted to communicate and get a response, you had to use Slack. So I'm not going to talk about how we do it, but the why was that there was far too much communication happening where questions were being asked and answers were not being given. So we implemented Slack for that reason.
Okay. I love that. I'm going to jump in. I agree with everything you say. And I just want to say the why of why I implemented Slack is perhaps a little bit more personal. It's a little bit more of a story. It's because the team member, I only had a few team members at the time, but the main one at that time, I was driving her nuts with sending her so many emails.
Yes.
And so we'd outgrown email as a channel. And what she pointed out to me was, Daniel, you're really comfortable operating out of your inbox because for you, that is the choke point. She said, but you don't understand. I'm working for 3 other businesses as well. She was only working for me part-time. She said, I can't operate that way. I need us to operate out of Slack, because she basically had kind of forced that on these other businesses where she was being like an executive assistant to someone. And in effect, this 24-year-old was working with these entrepreneurs that were older than her, in some cases 10, 15 years older than her, and saying, hey, could you act like a responsible grown adult, please? And so she told me she'd kind of forced it on these businesses. And so she could very easily flip between workspaces for the various businesses that she was working for and doing admin work for. So that's the very practical reason I started using Slack. Nice. What I will say is that after I started using it, I can't believe that I'd ever operated in a different way. It was so much better to have, for those who don't know how Slack operates, you have a workspace and you can directly message people within the workspace, or there can be channels that you create around topics, and the sky's the limit. You choose what the channel topics are. For us, so for 7FMS, just to be really practical, we have a podcast production channel, we have a general channel, we have a random channel. I actually put a random channel in every workspace that I have, just because I like to drop memes and jokes to the whole team and make them laugh. I mostly get ignored, but I like having it anyway. So for the podcast, we don't have a lot of channels. For Grow Your Music Studio, we have a heck of a lot more. We have a channel around our social media strategy, coaching, an executive channel, a general channel, a launch channel, a marketing channel, also a random channel. I also have private communications with a lot of the team members through there. For grouplessons.com, we have a feedback channel where we just talk about feedback we're getting from clients. We have a general channel as well. We have an ideas channel. We've got a problems channel. We've got a marketing channel, and again, a random channel. And once again, I also have private one-to-one direct messaging with all the people on that team, which, by the way, grouplessons.com is a sponsor of this podcast. If you're looking for a group piano system that is honestly, I have to say it, I said this in the last episode too, probably the best group system I've ever seen, just because of the flexibility, the class sizes, the tools that come along with the system, the fact that it is prepackaged but also has a lot of flexibility. You should definitely check out grouplessons.com. It can raise your margins. It can lower your stress. It can provide a retention boost in that kids love to play the game. There's a technology and app component to it. Kids love to play that game and get a high score for each of the songs they pass. So we see their home practice times go way, way up. Check that out at grouplessons.com. But those are the channels that we have in Slack on grouplessons.com. And so just the point I'm getting so practical here is that I want people to understand that this is a way to facilitate a lot of communication between you and team members, even if it's just 1 or 2 team members, which was the truth for me 6-7 years ago.
Right.
But it really just improved things overall because it lowered the barrier to communication. Meanwhile, it lowered how much I operate out of my inbox, and it actually facilitated more communication happening rather than less, which for a distributed team especially was really, really important. There was just a connection, an ability to just talk to someone like that and it not feel as formal as quote unquote sending an email. It became more conversational. So those were those are kind of the whys, and then the of why I started, but then the why as to why I've continued to use it and just absolutely love that tool. It's probably one of my favorite business tools I've ever used. So Those are my whys, Nate.
Well, and you got into some of the hows that I want to touch on.
Yes. Yes.
Creating of channels is really, really important as you scale your music school. So let me give you some music school examples at Brooklyn Music Factory around channels. So how can you use Slack? You can create specific conversation channels where you stay on topic, and you stay on topic with the people that matter. So you add only those people that need to hear those topics to those channels. Let me give a very concrete example. Right now, we're in gig season. We're doing our songwriting parties at Brooklyn Music Factory. We have a songwriting party channel where all the private lesson teachers can simply communicate any questions, concerns, share successes around preparing for the songwriting party. Who really needs to hear all those? Ben, who's the director of the private lesson program and really is the producer of the songwriting parties. And that's like, I don't even know how many, 300 students that are going to be celebrating in these parties. So that's a whole lot of student stories that need to be tracked. If that comes in only to his DM box, goes directly to Ben, then here's another essential part of channels. It's very difficult for Ben to prioritize communications, right? In any given season, you have different focus or foci as an owner or a director in your school, right? So you need to use your communication tools to be able to prioritize what communication you're going to get back to right away and what can wait a week. An email box doesn't allow for that because everything is just flooding in top to bottom. Of course, you can come up with your organization system and flag emails, etc., but it's still just all dumping into the same inbox. So that's another really important detail around why you want to come up with a communication tool that allows you to parse out the conversations and therefore prioritize what gets your attention. I will tell you right now, Daniel, you want to know what gets my attention? Any questions, comments, and concerns that comes from directors. Any question, comments, and concerns or input that comes around our annual plan, because we're right in annual plan, project planning, and implementing or sort of launching of projects. So those Slack channels are really important to me. I'm always going to prioritize getting back to people there. Currently, I'm acting as marketing director. So if anybody writes me, like literally just happened this morning, hey, I think this web form's broken. Someone just bought this thing, but they didn't fill out a type form, so something's off there. Well, that's my responsibility. So I need to get back to them, right? But I'm not going to respond, for example. Right now, my priority isn't, as you pointed out, the random channel. My priority is in a whole bunch of other channels. So I'm not going there. I'll let that channel just fill up. And then eventually, when I've got 20 minutes to process, I'll go through and I'll quickly respond. So that's what I wanted to add. I wanted to add the benefit of prioritizing communication. Thoughts on that, Daniel? Yeah. Additions?
Oh, I love all that. And I think it's giving people a real insight into how it might be used. I think the only thing I would want to do before we jump on to other tools that are important for running a team or managing a team would be a quick start guide for how to get this going. Okay. So if you hear this and you're like, oh yeah, we are operating out of our inbox. Oh yeah, we don't really have great communication. Oh yeah, I have to chase my teachers down all the time. Oh yeah, I don't go in on Thursdays and that's the only time this teacher comes in. I haven't seen this teacher in 6 months. And the communication between me and that teacher is terrible. You might be having thoughts similar to these and think, yes, this tool could really, really helpful. Here's the challenge. How do you get it started? So I'm going to lead off here, Nate, with this.
I love it.
This is my biggest tip. Don't ponder for 6 months whether you want to use Slack or not. If you have a team communication problem or you think it could get better, before you make this gigantic plan or reach out to us with 62 questions, well, what about this? Should I do this channel or should I not do this channel? Just here's the thing. Go subscribe to it before you even have a plan, before you're sure you want to use it. Just go subscribe to it, start paying the monthly fee, And you just paying that small monthly fee, it's going to motivate you to actually figure out and learn how to use it. Like it just being on, even though it's a small amount, it just being on your credit card bill is your business credit card or your personal credit card bill is going to make you like jump in there and start using this, probably poorly at first, but that's how we all start doing these things.
Yeah.
There's this great quote: when people pay, they pay attention.
Nice.
So start, if you want to prioritize something, find a way to pay for it, because it's a signal to your brain, your subconscious, that, oh, this is more important. I need to really pay attention to this. You'll find a way to make it work. And it's why we gave some of these, hacks here over the last 5-10 minutes. Start with a general channel, start with a problems channel, just start with a few channels there. And then as you go along, add some, maybe there's one you never use, delete that one. It just doesn't matter. Have like just a basic 30-minute sketch of how I'm going to use this, maybe watch a couple videos on it, and then just go start paying for it, and it'll force you to start using it.
Yeah.
Any
can I add to that?
Tips for you, Nate? Oh, please.
I do. I'm going to say, once you've signed up for Slack, onboard like one team member and train the two of you to communicate using it, i.e., when they write you an email, just respond, I'm going to respond in Slack. When they talk to you in the hallway about something, write them back with a summary of what you talked about in Slack. But just find someone who's going to be an early adopter with a new tool with you and start there. Start small. I was looking at how Brooklyn Music Factory onboarded team to Slack, because when it's one thing for you and I, Daniel, to be like, hey, let's use Slack because A, we were already using it, but B, it's just two of us plus a handful of other people on the team, right? It's another thing when you have, like when BMF started, I think we had 20 to 25 employees that we were trying to onboard all at once. So we created a Slack one sheet, a training on it. Let me read out loud what we say to everybody in this training. It's really simple and straightforward, but it's 5 quick points. Write down and internalize these BMF tips when it comes to Slacking. Okay, here it is. Number 1, build into your schedule a total of 10 minutes before and after teaching to check Slack. Keep up with the messages that concern you. Keeping up, rather, is very important. In other words, don't be like, oh, Slack is something I'll look at every few days. No, make sure that every day that you're on the job site, you're using it, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. Number 2, stop. Don't send the message until you've actually read through your response, right? You got to be careful here, right? It's just like an email in that, yes, you want to be conversational in it, but you want to be careful that you're not just like whipping off things because it's super easy. It's not the same as just throwing out a text, right? You want to be somewhat mindful because this is the job site and you're communicating. And if you communicate in such a way that's sort of off-putting to team, well, then the likelihood of them actually opening up and being communicative with you goes down. So you do have to be a little bit mindful. Number 3 is over-communicate. If we rely entirely on Slack to communicate, as a result, it can feel overwhelming. So know that you can always ask questions. Always help yourself by customizing your Slackmosphere, but always ask questions. So feel free to mute channels that don't pertain to you, but somehow you've been added to them. Utilize the search function. These are all sort of details, getting back to what you said, Daniel, is just train in the tool. Especially once you pay for it, you'll train better. Finally, the last 2 items are turn off your notifications on Slack on your phone, right? One of the benefits of Slack is that you can use it to be very specific about the job that you're doing. But if you set your notifications on your device that you're going to bring home with you, all of a sudden you're going to get pinged with a Slack at 10 p.m. And now it's all of a sudden annoying you. Now you don't want to turn it on and look at it and communicate with your team, right? So we strongly encourage our team to make sure notifications are off on their phone, and then just use the desktop, use the web app, etc. And then finally, mention your department director over in #training to say, hey, I made it onto Slack. We put that as the last tip. You want to know why we put that as the last tip, Daniel? Because it's our training tip. We know that this employee has actually gone through the employee Slack training if they get to tip number 5 and they write their director, hey, I'm on Slack now, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the last little piece of it. So yes, just a word of warning, if you're going to introduce a new tool before we get to other tools that we might want to use for communication, etc. If you're going to introduce a new tool, Daniel, as we talk about often, you do have to actually commit to learning about it and building it into your system. Don't think that this is just like a set it and forget it overnight success.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. It's occurring to me, and I've got a few things I want to follow up on there. It's occurring to me that we should reach out to Slack and have them sponsor this episode. They should be sponsoring the episode. It's probably not going to happen, but you know who does sponsor this episode, Nate? And I bet you have a Slack channel around this particular thing, don't you?
We do. We have a Big Music Games Slack channel. In fact, we have a Big Music Games Slack channel and a Big Music Games Ideas Slack channel. And then we also have a bug reporting Big Music Games channel, which gets zapped over when anyone who's playing Big Music Games has a problem. They can click a button on our website and it zaps straight into that channel to let our team know we have an issue. Yeah, so this, thank you for bringing this up, Daniel. BigMusicGames.com/7FMS, that's number 7FMS, is where you, our faithful listeners, can start playing and gamifying your music lessons today. Set up a free account, as our listeners know, because if they've made it this far in the journey, we're at 100 plus apps. They know that Brooklyn Music Factory is built on a game-based fluency first approach, and we have teachers all around the world in schools that are playing games in their lessons too. So we make them available to you. So visit bigmusicgames.com/7FMS. You can be playing games today, totally free of charge. And if you report a bug, Daniel, it'll get zapped into our Slack channel.
Slack channel, right. and I will just point out, just for those who maybe are not as familiar with Big Music Games, is this is not a replacement for your current curriculum. This is something that you can add on to your curriculum so that you can just further enrich the lives of the students in your studio. So Nate, it's occurring to me, we just did a couple weeks ago, we released episode 101, and in that episode, I talked a little bit about how I kind of was making it up as I went along with the performance review system for our team. What's really interesting about that training component of Slack right there is that you didn't get that from Slack.
No.
You made that up yourself, right?
Yeah, totally. It's just a one sheet in our training.
How long did it take you to make that up?
I don't know. Kai, who was our director of ops back then, made it. I bet you.
So you didn't even do it?
I didn't even do it. No.
Wow.
I'm reading. I just did a search in our training manual and found that in our G Drive. So I didn't do it. Kai did it. He was awesome at onboarding our team to tools like this and then creating one sheets. But I will bet you that it only took them, less than an hour to create the one sheet.
Yes.
And then he's linking to all of the training materials that are on the Slack site. So we're not creating any. We created one training video so that it felt like BMF, but it was really quick, down and dirty. And most of the links within that one sheet are just taking you back to Slack's Help Center so that you can figure out how to add yourself to a channel and blah, blah, blah. But I will tell you, back to your question, is that likely we brought it on board. We tested it out for a few weeks. We found out, warts and all, where everybody was having struggles.
Yep.
And then we made this one sheet. And then we brought it out. We released it at an all-staff meeting.
Which is exactly to the point that I think that we either made... Now I'm beginning to forget. We either made it in this episode or we made it in episode 101. Is that you can't ponder. You just have to move forward. No, yeah, we said it earlier in this episode. I don't know. Maybe we did.
You talked about it.
Yeah. You can't wait. You just have to go in there. And I think that speaks to the advice you gave, Nate, which was, hey, just bring one team member on. Maybe you as an owner, maybe you only have 6 teachers. It's just you, 6 teachers, maybe a part-time desk person, maybe a part-time admin. Maybe just do it between you and your admin, or maybe do it with your between you and the teacher who has the most students, work out those kinks, make observations, sit down, create space for yourself, reflect, write down a bunch of thoughts like what's working, what's not. And here's the message. And this is kind of a hard thing to say sometimes, but just have confidence. Just have confidence that it will be okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I think so often just being confident makes up for the fact that you don't feel like you know what you're doing. It's worked for me quite a bit. And, I maybe have a few scrapes and bruises from taking that approach, but I think I've moved faster in business with that approach than had I, again, in a lot of these places, just like slowed down, pondered. And again, hey, I also have done that. And I, confessing to myself, like I did that in 2023 a few times as well. And I look back and like, oh man, I should have just gone forward. I should have just made a decision, or I should have just go out there, risk the bruises, because the long-term effect of you having that kind of mindset and you operating in that way is, yes, you will have a few scrapes and bruises, but overall your business will grow faster. You'll make more. You'll have a better experience of the business side of your career if that's what you're willing to do. And so I think Nate and Kai just perfectly exemplified this, that they used it a few weeks. They made this one sheet, this internal tool to help the rest of their rather large team. And here they are years later. And I know just from personal experience, Nate, that it's been an unmitigated win for you all.
Yeah. And if you're like, maybe we circle back to where we opened, which is if your why is really clear, Daniel, in other words, let me just be specific and state it clearly here, that our communication was sucking at the time. It just wasn't good, right? Lots of people were asking questions and not getting answers. Lots of people had ideas and nobody was reflecting on them or acting on them. And so we knew that there was an issue. We didn't know what the solution was, but guess what? Back to your last point here, Daniel, I heard often enough from other business owners and friends that, hey, there's this tool, Slack. It's basically like chat for your business. You should try it out. Once I heard 3, 4, 5 friends say they use it and they like it, I was like, okay, that's good enough for me. I know I've got a problem. My evidence of success is that we will actually be able to answer questions more efficiently. We will be able to act on great ideas, and I won't feel so overwhelmed as a communicator. So we just went for it. So if you're listening to this and like, man, I already know that it's a pain in the ass to communicate with all my teachers, and then you're probably pretty clear on what's not working, which is what you're doing right now. Right. That's where I was.
Yeah. So can I confess another thing, Nate?
Yeah. What do you got?
I've answered several Slack messages while recording this podcast episode. I just flipped over to the other window because I had team members asking me things.
Wow. Okay. So it's very efficient.
Yeah. Very
it works
efficient.
Quickly and easily.
So I've got an idea.
Yo.
I think we've done a great job of explaining why to use it, how to use it, even a quick start, some tips to getting started kind of quickly with this tool. I think then it's a binary decision for someone listening. If you've got a communication problem, yes, no, I want to use this. I would invite listeners, wherever you're watching this, whether it's if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching it on Facebook, because we release the video versions there. If you're, podcast, if you're listening to it on a podcast player, you can come back to growyourmusicstudio.com and just find our podcast category, and you can leave a comment. Maybe there's a communication tool other than Slack that you use that you really, really enjoy. I personally don't know of any because I've been so committed to Slack over the years. But I would invite people to, reach out to us, offer alternatives. Maybe we talk about that in a future episode, because what I'm going to suggest, Nate, is that we do another episode on tools and communication, and let's just deal with some of these other tools in a separate episode. Yeah. I honestly think we've really covered this well here. And I think a follow-up episode where we talk about the task and project management side of things as its own unique episode would be a really, really good idea. What do you think?
I love that. I was thinking the same way, because I know in our Evernote we had jotted down things like, hey, let's talk about Asana. Let's talk about Evernote. Let's talk about these other tools. And I actually had a client, a school owner out in Mississippi, who said, Nate, you should really release a course on how to use Evernote for music school owners. And I was just like, I don't know if that's going to be hit the list in this year, but I think you're right on the money. I think if we do, it's almost like a category of tools that work for us and for music schools. And if you a quick start guide, a jump start on new tools. I love that idea.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Don't know what that was going to be. We'll probably put a little bit of a delay between us doing this episode and another episode on some of these other tools that are just indispensable for school owners or small business owners. But thanks for listening. We always love hearing your feedback. Ask us some questions. If you do have questions for us about any of the things that we talked about in this episode, others, certainly send those in. You can subscribe to our email list and get direct access to us through email by going to growyourmusicstudio.com/7FMS. You'll be alerted to new episodes, special events, special workshops that we're hosting for free if you go join the email list at growyourmusicstudio.com/7FMS. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one.